For the fourth time in the past 15 years, the NFL draft will not have a quarterback go first overall. But there's no shortage of teams looking for a franchise QB. Matt Corral put up big numbers at Ole Miss and offers dual threat ability. But is he ready to step in and play right away at the next level?
He extends plays, can stretch it vertically. He'll alter the arm angles, much like you see Mahomes and Josh Allen do. He just doesn't have the upside.
Malik Willis is also firmly in the mix to potentially go in the top 10 and offers tantalizing upside. But like Corral, there are questions about when he would be ready to play.
Malik Willis is one of those quarterbacks that's just hard to judge. The film this year isn't great, but if you put in 2 years ago when he put Liberty on his back, it was super impressive.
Kenny Pickett burst onto the national scene as a fifth-year senior and will likely hear his name called on day one. Although he typically played his best against good competition, there are questions whether he can develop into an elite quarterback in the NFL.
He's got everything. The question really becomes, again, is he a product of a system, or is this guy going to be able to go right in immediately day one and start?
And depending where the other quarterbacks land, there is some buzz that Desmond Ritter could get selected on day one. He shows good poise in the pocket and has good arm strength, but would most likely benefit from going to a team to develop his mechanics.
A lot of athleticism, makes a lot of plays with his feet, makes a lot of plays on the run.
The class of quarterbacks in the 2022 NFL Draft is not the caliber we've seen over the last few seasons. But there's always one team willing to pay a premium to draft the most important position in sports.
Stars for our NFL Combine Super Preview. The good fellas checking in here. Chris Trapasso along with Emory Hunt here to do all the heavy lifting. So let's get to it, fellas. Emory, I'll start with you. Let's talk about some of those QBs we saw there, but who else might be catching your eye next week?
Listen, Cole Kelly out of southeastern Louisiana is someone to keep an eye on. He's 6'7", 250 pounds. He transferred in from Arkansas and set numerous records at that Lions program. He won the Walter Payton Award, which is the FCS equivalent to the Heisman Trophy. And I was out there at the NFLPA game where he won game MVP. And he is someone that definitely fits the mold. You talk about Josh Allen and what he brings to the table. Arm strength. He can throw the football through someone's face mask. Mobility. He has that. He has over 29 rushing touchdowns in his career at Southeastern. This is someone that's trending in the right direction. I'm excited to see how he performs out there in Indy.
I'm going to go with Kansas State's Skyler Thompson. I will not be surprised if after Malik Willis, he's the most athletic quarterback at the Combine this year in Indianapolis. Now, he never threw for more than 12 touchdowns in one season with the Wildcats, so he's not a high-volume passer, and his accuracy isn't really good. But at like 6'1" and around 230 pounds, Thompson's built like a running back and can be used in the designed run game. A lot of his weaknesses won't really be shown at the Combine inside Lucas Oil Stadium. I think he's going to run very fast in the 40-yard dash. Don't be surprised if he has a good vertical and a broad jump. And for a team willing to roll the dice on the third day for kind of this weapon that can also throw the football, I think after the Combine we'll be talking about Skyler Thompson as that guy.
All right, some of those late guys outside of the big three in Corral, Willis, and Pickett, you guys giving us two of those there. What about those pass catchers you're excited to see about next week, Emory?
Well, you look at wide receiver Dejon Dixon out of Nichols, another guy that was at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. And when you watch him run routes, it's class in session. That's how talented he is in that regard. He's someone that tracks the ball really well. He stacks defensive backs and is able to accelerate to the ball. He was someone that lit up my Raging Cajuns this season for almost 200 yards receiving. This is someone that can touch any level of the field he wants to with the football in terms of catching it and running. He's a deep play threat, big play threat. And I'm excited to see what he runs in the 40-yard dash in Indy, because I believe he plays faster than whatever that time is going to be out there on that track.
My pick is Western Michigan's Skye Moore, and I don't really know where to start with him because I love everything about his game. Not only did he burst onto the scene as a freshman, was freshman All-American for the Broncos, he continued that production throughout his career, culminating with a 94-catch final season at Western Michigan. And in terms of traits, Skye Moore is a first-round caliber talent, in my opinion. He's great getting off of press coverage at the line of scrimmage. He runs very sharp routes. He's really a running back after the catch with good elusiveness and power. And then down the field on those vertical routes, he makes a lot of contested catches look easy, especially for a wide receiver who's under 6 foot. Now, ultimately, where Skye Moore is selected will hinge on the 40-yard dash. If he runs below 4.50, somewhere in the 4.4s, I think he could sneak into one of the final picks in round 1. But if not, he'll probably be picked in the 2nd round. But regardless of where he's selected, in a few years, Skye Moore will be a wide receiver that we all realize should have been picked in the 1st round. He is that good.
All right, maybe he can Skye Moore based on what we see there leading into, okay, maybe that doesn't work. We don't like that. All right. Chris, what about your running back? So you got your eye on next week.
Jerome Ford from Cincinnati. Now, this is a guy that started his career at Alabama, so you know the talent is there. But of course, with the Crimson Tide, he was buried behind a bunch of future NFL running backs. He transfers to Cincinnati and then has back-to-back seasons averaging over 6 yards per carry, including 2021 when he totaled over 1,300 yards on the ground. What I like about Ford is that he's built low to the ground, so he's compact. That helps his contact balance. He's pretty elusive, and he's really fast. He had 6 carries of over 40 yards or more for the Bearcats this season. I think in the 40-yard dash, if he's one of the top 2 or 3 in that most highly coveted drill at the Combine, we're going to be talking about the Cincinnati running back as a round 2 or a round 3 ball carrier.
You know, that's a great pick right there, Chris. I'm a big fan of his game. Thought he was better than Dokes when he was at Cincinnati. But I'm going to go with Zamira White out of Georgia. I'm a big fan of the kid, big fan of his game. Remember, he was a highly talented recruit coming out of high school, had those 2 knee injuries, unfortunate, going into Georgia. But now he's back, looking like he has that burst once again. And he is someone that just runs angry. So the 40 is going to be big for him. The pass catching drills will also be big for him to see how well he catches the football. Wasn't asked to do a lot of that at Georgia, but he just screams Baltimore Raven, Miami Dolphin, New Orleans Saint, Buffalo Bill. He screams a pick for that team, for those teams. But I'm excited to see how well he catches the football, considering that's where they're going to have some questions about what he brings to the table in that regard.
White heading to the NFL with some championship ring on his finger. Of course, the Natty there going to Georgia this past season. What about those tight ends, Chris? Who's clocking in for you?
Isaiah Likely from Coastal Carolina. This has been a program on the rise the past couple of years. And Likely's really unique in that he's not an intimidating tight end that's going to win down the seam like a Travis Kelce or a Darren Waller or a Mark Andrews. But I think there's room for that H-back type that can make plays out of the backfield. You can give Likely the ball on jet sweeps. You can even throw him screens. He's such a smooth athlete, and I really like that about his game. Not crazy fast down the football field, but his yards after the catch ability really separate him from the other tight ends in this draft class. So the 3-cone drill, the short shuttle, even some of the explosion jumping drills, the vertical and the broad jump, that's where he's really going to excel. And I think on the 4th or 5th round, 3rd day of the draft, a smart team will pick him and accentuate him underneath by getting him the football in space.
You know, a lot of people get hung up on comps and want to say it's a 1-to-1, but when you look at Greg Dulcich out of UCLA, he's sort of similar to that of George Kittle of San Francisco. When I'm talking about in regards to him catching the football and getting up the field, making guys miss. He's very elusive for a tight end. Probably should be talked about a lot more than what we're seeing on the national landscape. I'm a big fan of his game and what he does in a catch and run situation. So the 3-cone drill, how he does in the L drill, those agility drills will be big for him, and what to watch for, because I know he can catch football. His game is predicated on making guys miss and getting down the field, picking up yards in chunks. One of the more underrated tight ends in the draft class.
Plenty of teams need that athletic tight end to come and be that maybe 3rd or 4th option when it comes to the passing game. You can say the same thing when it comes to offensive linemen. Hey, Cincinnati maybe, Kansas City maybe need to rebuild after we saw last year as well. Chris, who do you have when you talk about those offensive linemen next week?
Tyler Smith, the offensive tackle from Tulsa. And I'm going to say that Tyler Smith is probably more excited than any other prospect to work out at the Combine, because the weaknesses to his game aren't going to show up on the field inside Lucas Oil Stadium. 6'6", 330-pound, dancing bear on the perimeter. He's not the best using his hands. He drew a lot of holding calls at Tulsa, but his movement skills absolutely are first-round caliber. I think in all the drills, 40, vertical, 3-cone, he is going to test among the best with those guys like Evan Neal that are going to be selected early in the first round. Tyler Smith, I think after the combine, we're going to realize maybe he needs a little bit of polish and refinement to his game, but he definitely is a first-round talent.
You know, this is a really good year for HBCU prospects, and Jatari Carter out of Southern is the next in line of the great HBCU offensive lineman. I'm not going to say he's Teron Armstead because Armstead played tackle, but Jatari played tackle at Southern. The teams are looking at him more as a guard on the inside at the NFL level, or maybe even center. So when you bring that left tackle athleticism, footwork, and ability to anchor, you move that inside, you have a tremendous pass blocking guard, a guy that can also get out and around on run plays. So I'm a big fan of his athleticism. So the agility drills will be big for him and just highlighting the talent that's coming out this year from the HBCU ranks.
The defensive line prospects in the 2022 NFL Draft are a talented group, with a serious debate of which edge rusher should be first off the board. You can argue no player in college football boosted their stock this past season more than Aiden Hutchinson. Coming into a senior campaign with just 3.5 sacks for his entire career, he tallied 14, including 3 against Michigan's arch-rival Ohio State. It's fair to debate if he's a one-year wonder, while many think he's a prototype defensive end at the next level.
I just know whatever team that picks me, they're going to get my all. I'm really hoping to just win some ball games wherever I go and have a lot of success.
For much of the season, it was Kavon Thibodeau who was projected to go first overall. And while his on-field production was surpassed this year by Hutchinson, many experts think with his size, skill, and athleticism, he's just scratching the surface of his potential.
The job is never finished. Whether it's pass rush, whether it's run stop, whether it's technique, whether it's watching film.
Other edge rushers who figured to go on day one are Hutchinson's former teammate at Michigan, David Ojabo, George Carloftus out of Purdue, and perhaps the biggest draft riser post-Senior Bowl, Jermaine Johnson II. Elsewhere in the trenches, there's a talented trio of interior linemen from Georgia's national championship team, Trayvon Walker, Devontae Wyatt, and Jordan Davis. Who will make the biggest draft leap or slide down the board? And will Hutchinson or Thibodeau become the first defensive player to be selected #1 overall since Myles Garrett in 2017? We'll get the answers to these questions April 28th in Sin City.
All right, Tommy Chan breaking that down for us there. Chris and Emory back in here. And fellas, let's start up front. We just saw there the edge rushers. Chris, who do you have and we are looking at next week?
Purdue's George Carloftus. I feel like he's getting lost a little bit among these first-round edge rushers because he wasn't at the Senior Bowl. But this is someone that was a monster recruit for the Purdue Boilermakers program, and as a freshman in 2019, looked like a future top half of the first-round selection. Wasn't quite as good in the COVID-shortened season of 2020, but then flipped the switch back on in 2021. He has NFL defensive end length, size, power, pass rushing moves, and he looks like a high-caliber athlete. I think he's going to put a stamp on this combine athletically and remind everyone that he is one of the best, most well-rounded edge rushers in this class.
You know, remember that great NWA song, Always Into Something? That's Amari Barno out of Virginia Tech. Anytime you look up and the quarterback had to get rid of the football quickly, who was providing the pressure? Barno. Anytime you see a running back blown up in the backfield, who was that guy that blew him up? Barno. He's not the biggest guy, but he's active and aggressive like Jermaine Johnson was at Florida State. So I feel like when you look at him in these agility drills, these bag drills, people will learn a little bit more about his athleticism. Then they'll go back and watch the tape and realize this dude was literally always into something.
Of course, when we talk about the edge rushers, their job is to get after the quarterback. But when we look in the middle, though, defensive lineman, look, everybody is not going to land at Jordan Davis. Emory, who's like catching your attention at this point?
You know, he could play on the edge. He could play inside. He reminds me a lot of Malik Jackson. I'm looking at Michael Clements out of Texas A&M. This is someone that had some injury issues at A&M, put it all together his senior season, had his best year on his way out. So I'm expecting this guy who's 6'5", 270 to wow folks with his athleticism. He's trending in the right direction from a play standpoint. And when you sit back and watch what the game is, how long can you be up front? Can you extend, lockout, and get to the quarterback and also be disruptive with that length versus the run? Clements does all of those things, and now he's healthy. He's fully realizing that potential. I'm excited to see him perform as well.
No one has more momentum entering the combine than Oklahoma defensive tackle Perry and Winfrey. He won Senior Bowl MVP, and he probably was the MVP during the week of practices. At right around 6'4" and 300 pounds, he played up and down the line of scrimmage for the Sooners. And he's not super polished, but his game is based on his lightning quick first step, a lot of speed to power conversion. That's really why he was unblockable during those Senior Bowl practices. I think the 40-yard dash, the vertical, a lot of the explosion drills are going to be his best friend. And his film looks like he's probably a 4th or a 5th round selection. After the Senior Bowl, there's a lot of buzz about him on day 2. Don't be surprised if Perry and Winfrey has a really impressive workout from top to bottom. And then there's even some late first round buzz for him because he's so long, versatile, and athletic.
Plugging up that middle for the Sooners. They're in the Big 12 in Oklahoma. A big piece to that defense. How about the backers behind the memory? Who's catching your eye?
Darian Beavers would be someone that I would have hated to go up against because he can match up in coverage. And that's where the game is for linebackers. Can you cover? Can you match up over tight ends and tailbacks? He can definitely do that. You saw him down at the Senior Bowl have a great week of work in that regard. So you don't have to take him off the field. He does a great job in playing downhill versus the run, but also could drop back in zone coverage or man coverage and hold his own as well. So he's someone that's going to excite people with how well he's able to move in those weave drills, how well he's able to catch a football. He's coming off a fantastic all-star game circuit and another guy that's going to have a big week in Indy, in my opinion.
All right, I'm going to stay in Norman, Oklahoma, and go with Brian Asamoah Perry and Winfrey's teammate. And I agree with Emory. It is all about coverage today at the linebacker position. And Asamoah, 6 foot, 222 pounds. So some teams might think, hey, that's not heavy enough to deal with pulling guards and centers at the next level. But he can run with every tight end in the NFL, backs out of the backfield. He's very twitchy and sudden. He plays with reckless abandon. His hair's on fire when he's on the football field. I think Brian Asamoah is going to run sub 4.50 at the linebacker position, being that light and just watching his film, how truly fast he is. He's kind of a throwback run and chase linebacker, but in today's NFL, you can deal with linebackers closer to 220 pounds. Don't be surprised if Brian Asamoah is one of the fastest linebackers at the Combine.
Speaking of speed, of course, talk about the little guys in the secondary, the D-backs. We all know the NFL is a passing league, so you need to have a few of those, at least 3 or 4 or 5, based on the way this league is set up here. Emory, who are the DBs catching your eye?
Listen, Roger Mcqueary is one of the best corners in college football in the NFL draft. You look at all the teams that they played. Penn State, oh wow, they have a wide receiver that's going to get drafted. Alabama has a couple guys that are going to get drafted. Georgia, Mississippi State has a guy that's at the Combine as well. You look at all of those teams and all of those receivers, they had their worst game against Roger Mcqueary. I know a lot of people talk about his arm length. He had 14 pass breakups. Maybe his arm was a little bit longer. He had 14 interceptions, but those pass breakups still count the same. That's loss of down. That's moving on to the next down. I'm a big fan of his game. His cover skills is outstanding, and this is someone that has been a stud since he stepped foot on campus at Auburn. So I just want to talk about Roger Mcqueary. I don't care what he runs, how he jumps, what he does in the bag drills or whatnot, the weave drills. This dude can cover his butt off. I'm excited to see him go out there and compete.
Yeah, that's a great call, Emory. He reminds me a lot of Tre'Davious White when he was coming out of LSU, who was not the longest or the fastest, but was just really productive in the SEC. My pick, Penn State safety Jaquan Brisker. If Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame was not in this draft class, Jaquan Brisker would be the freaky safety prospect that we would all be raving about. He's very long. The athleticism really pops on film. Very hard hitter in run support. Great as a blitzer. And really has no problem covering tight ends and running backs down the football field. I think after the Combine, we will see, based on his athletic profile, just how good his film is, that Jaquan Brisker is definitely concretely inside the first round in this draft class as kind of that versatile safety that can range from the deep middle, cover the slot, and blitz the quarterback on third downs.
All right, we'll see how that pans out for both of those next week there in Indy. I'm curious now, at the point of the segment, we need to figure out who has the wheels when it comes to the 40-yard dash. Emory, I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, this was the easy one for me because, first of all, Calvin Austin, he's built like a fun-sized Twix, number one, so he's not carrying much weight. Number two, he's an All-American in track. That's all you need to know. He's All-American in track, All-Conference in track. He is going to blow the 40 up. I would say he's going to touch at least low 4.3, high 4.2.
Yeah, I mean, to try to find anyone else that could really compete with Calvin Austin, I think you're trying too hard. 9-time state champion at the high school level. He, quote unquote, bulked up to around 170 pounds for the Senior Bowl. So there's not a lot of weight on his frame. And just watch his film at Memphis, taking jet sweeps 40, 50 yards to the house, running past every single cornerback he faced. Certainly will be a gadget player at the next level, and I think he can be a good one in the right offense, but he will be very excited when he lines up to run that 40-yard dash. I think he's going to run away with this one.
Real quick, since you both went with the same player, give me a time. Remember, you first real quick.
4.29.
Okay. Chris?
I'll say 4.3 flat, a little bit slower, but still really burning up the track.
Okay, yeah, that's extremely fast. 4.3 is pretty good. Regardless if it's 4.29 or 4.3, it pretty much works out. All right, real quick, player to surprise you at the combine that's on your mind right now, Emory.
Well, it's two HBCU prospects, Marquise Bell out of Florida A&M and Jacoby Durant out of South Carolina State. Marquise Bell is someone that can play corner or safety, did at the NFLPA Bowl, had a great week out there. And Jacoby Durant plays a lot like Eric Allen, the former Philadelphia Eagle. This dude is brash. He's athletic. He can turn the ball over, which I love. And he has the mindset that you need to play out there on the perimeter.
I'm going to go with Jeremy Rucker, the tight end from Ohio State, because he got the reputation as just this really solid blocker because that's what Ohio State asked him to do. But this is a former big recruit that flashed at times down the seam when he had Justin Fields throwing him the football and CJ Stroud last year. Not just a blocker that's stiff and not a good athlete. I think we'll see that Jeremy Rucker does have day 2 type athleticism to go along with really first round caliber blocking skills.
All right, yeah, that pans out as always. Chris Trapasso and Emory Hunt tapping in, giving us that super preview before we get to Indy. Appreciate it, fellas. Don't forget the conversation continues. The Pick Sit podcast, the fellas always breaking it down. Will Brinson is joined by Josh Edwards to preview the biggest things to watch as those top prospects put their numbers to the test here. Josh also tapping in on Kenny Pickett's numbers and which edge rusher will stand out in that 3-cone drill. And of course, those breakout performers in Indy to keep an eye out for there. Download and follow the Pick Six.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.